In a quiet suburban neighborhood in Cleveland, Ohio, 8-year-old Emily Thompson lived a simple life with her single mother, Laura. Laura had raised Emily alone since her husband passed away in a car accident 5 years earlier. She worked long hours as a nurse at the local hospital, often pulling double shifts to make ends meet. Emily was a bright, responsible girl for her age, helping around the house with chores and always making sure to lock the door when her mom was at work. Their small home on Birchwood Street was modest, with peeling paint on the outside and an overgrown yard, but inside it was filled with love and small mementos of happier times, photos of family vacations, Emily's drawings taped to the fridge, and Laura's nursing certificates on the wall. One evening in late summer, as the sun began to set and cast long shadows over the streets, Laura came home from her shift feeling unusually exhausted. She had been battling a persistent cough for weeks, but chalked it up to seasonal allergies. That day, however, the fatigue hit her harder than ever. She managed to cook a simple dinner of macaroni and cheese for Emily before collapsing onto the couch. "Mommy's just tired, sweetie," she told Emily with a weak smile. "I'll rest a bit, and then we can watch that movie you like." Emily nodded, concerned but trusting, and sat beside her mother, stroking her hair gently. As the hours passed, Laura's breathing became labored. She tried to get up for water but felt a sharp pain in her chest. Emily watched in growing alarm as her mother's face turned pale, and she started gasping for air. "Mom? Mom, are you okay?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. Laura tried to respond, but the words came out in wheezes. She clutched her chest, realizing something was terribly wrong, perhaps the onset of a severe asthma attack or worse, complications from an undiagnosed heart condition that had been building silently. Panic set in for the little girl. Their phone was in the kitchen, but Laura had always taught Emily not to call 911 lightly. Yet this was different, her mom couldn't move, couldn't speak properly. Emily's mind raced. The hospital was too far to walk, and she didn't know any neighbors well enough to trust in an emergency. Then she remembered the police station just a few blocks away. Her school had taken a field trip there once, and the officers seemed kind. Tears streaming down her face, Emily made a decision that would change everything. She kissed her mother's forehead, whispering, "I'll get help, Mommy. I promise." Grabbing her jacket despite the warm evening, she bolted out the door and ran as fast as her small legs could carry her toward the station, sobbing uncontrollably. The streets blurred past her, and she didn't stop until she reached the steps of the police precinct, where Officer Daniel Harris was just finishing his shift. Officer Daniel Harris, a seasoned veteran of 15 years on the force, was wrapping up paperwork at the front desk when he heard the frantic pounding on the glass doors. It was nearly 8 p.m., and the station was quieting down for the night shift change. He looked up and saw a small girl, no older than 8, with tear-streaked cheeks and disheveled hair, banging desperately to be let in. Her cries echoed through the lobby, "Please. Help. Please follow me home." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. In his career, he'd seen distraught children before, runaways, victims of domestic disputes, but this girl's raw desperation was something else. He quickly buzzed her in, kneeling down to her level as she stumbled inside. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Are you hurt?" he asked gently, his voice calm despite the urgency. The girl, Emily, could barely speak through her sobs. She grabbed his hand with surprising strength for someone so small. "My mommy, she can't breathe, please, you have to come home with me. Hurry." Daniel exchanged a quick glance with his partner, Officer Maria Perez, who had just walked over. Maria nodded, sensing the gravity. They didn't waste time asking more questions. Children's instincts in emergencies were often spot on. Daniel radioed for backup and an ambulance just in case, then took Emily's hand. "Okay, we're coming. Show us the way." Emily led them out of the station and down the dimly lit streets, her little feet pounding the pavement. She didn't stop crying, repeating, "Please hurry," over and over. Daniel tried to soothe her, asking gentle questions to piece together the situation. "What's your name? Where's your daddy? Emily managed to gasp out her name and that her mom was alone, no one else at home. The officers jogged to keep up with her determined pace, their flashlights cutting through the twilight. Neighbors peeked out windows, wondering what the commotion was about, a police cruiser following a crying child. As they turned onto Birchwood Street, Emily pointed to the narrow, single-story house at the end. The yard was unkempt, weeds tall, and one window cracked from a past storm they couldn't afford to fix. Emily pushed the unlocked door open. In her panic, she'd forgotten to lock it behind her, and rushed inside, the officers close on her heels. The living room was dimly lit by a single lamp. There, on the worn couch, lay Laura Thompson, her chest heaving irregularly, face ashen, eyes half-closed in distress. She was conscious but barely, clutching at her throat as if fighting for every breath. Daniel froze for a split second, the sight hitting him hard. Maria immediately sprang into action, checking Laura's pulse and calling out vital signs into her radio. "We need that ambulance now. Possible cardiac event or severe respiratory distress." Emily threw herself at her mother's side, sobbing, "Mommy, I got help. They're here." Laura's eyes flickered open, filling with tears of relief and fear as she saw the uniforms. In that moment, the officers realized the depth of this child's courage. She had run through the darkening streets alone, terrified, to save the only family she had left. The ambulance arrived within minutes, sirens wailing as paramedics rushed into the house. Officer Daniel stepped back to give them space, but his eyes stayed on Emily, who clung to her mother's hand as the medics worked. They hooked Laura up to oxygen, stabilizing her breathing enough to transport her. "Suspected congestive heart failure," one paramedic murmured to Maria. Laura had been ignoring symptoms for months, shortness of breath, swelling in her legs, too proud and busy to seek help, fearing medical bills they couldn't pay. Now, it had escalated into a crisis. Emily refused to let go as they loaded Laura onto the stretcher. "I want to go with her," she cried. The paramedics agreed, and Daniel volunteered to drive Emily in the patrol car to the hospital, while Maria stayed to secure the house. On the way, Daniel tried to distract the girl with small talk. "You're very brave, Emily. Your mom is going to be okay because of you." But Emily just stared out the window, tears silent now, her small body exhausted from the ordeal. At the hospital, doctors confirmed the diagnosis: advanced heart failure, compounded by years of stress and overwork. Laura needed immediate treatment, medications, monitoring, and possibly surgery down the line. She was admitted to the ICU, stable but weak. Emily sat by her bed, holding her hand, as Laura whispered thanks through the oxygen mask. "My brave girl, you saved me." Nurses and doctors overheard the story from the officers and were moved, one even teared up, saying she'd never seen such determination in a child so young. Word spread quickly through the hospital staff and back to the police department. Daniel filed his report, emphasizing Emily's actions. By morning, the captain called him in. "This kid's a hero. We need to do something." Meanwhile, social services got involved briefly to ensure Emily had support. Laura had no close family nearby. A kind nurse offered to stay with Emily while Laura rested, but the girl insisted on sleeping in a chair beside the bed. As days passed, Laura improved slightly, able to speak more. She told Daniel and Maria about their struggles, widowhood, financial strain, her determination to provide for Emily alone. The officers listened, touched by the quiet strength mirroring the daughters. Maria, a mother herself, felt tears well up. "You two have been through so much," she said. Daniel promised to check in, and true to his word, he visited daily, bringing coloring books for Emily and magazines for Laura. The emotional weight of what could have happened if Emily hadn't acted hit everyone. Laura might not have survived the night alone. The little girl's run to the station wasn't just for help, it was an act of pure, selfless love that left the hardened officers reflecting on the fragility of life and the power of a child's heart. Recovery was slow for Laura. Weeks in the hospital turned into months of rehabilitation and follow-up care. Bills piled up, threatening to overwhelm them despite hospital assistance programs. That's when the community stepped in, sparked by the police department's quiet sharing of the story. A local news outlet picked it up. 8-year-old girl runs to police to save dying mother, act of courage touches hearts. Anonymized to protect privacy, but the details resonated. Donations poured in through a fundraiser set up by the precinct, a GoFundMe that raised enough for medical expenses and home repairs. Officer Daniel and Maria became regular visitors, almost like extended family. Daniel organized officers to mow the lawn and fix the cracked window. Maria brought homemade meals and played games with Emily, who slowly opened up about her fears. "I thought Mommy was going to leave me like Daddy did," she confessed one day, tears flowing again. Maria hugged her tightly, her own eyes misty. "But you didn't let that happen. You're the strongest little girl I know." Laura, from her hospital bed and later at home under nursing care, watched in awe as support flooded in. Neighbors she'd barely known left groceries on the porch. The hospital waived some fees after the story went viral locally. Even strangers sent cards and teddy bears for Emily. One arrived with a tiny police badge pinned to it, "From Daniel, for the bravest recruit we've ever seen." The emotional toll lingered. Laura cried often, not just from weakness but gratitude and guilt for putting Emily in that position. "I should have gone to the doctor sooner," she sobbed to Daniel during one visit. He shook his head. "You were doing your best. And Emily? She idolizes you." Indeed, Emily's bond with her mother deepened. She helped with medications, read books aloud, and never complained. For the officers, the case left indelible marks. Daniel, who'd grown cynical after years seeing the worst in people, found renewed faith. "That kid reminded me why I do this job," he told his wife at home, voice cracking. Maria nodded in agreement during shift debriefs. They attended Laura's discharge celebration, a small gathering at the house, now freshly painted thanks to volunteer officers. As Laura stepped through the door on home care, supported by a walker, she burst into tears seeing the transformed living room, cleaned, decorated with flowers, and photos reframed. Emily ran to her, hugging tightly. "Welcome home, Mommy." The room filled with applause from the small crowd, officers, nurses, neighbors. Everyone had tears in their eyes, moved by the journey from despair to hope. Months later, life for Emily and Laura settled into a new normal. Laura's condition stabilized with proper treatment and rest. She even returned to part-time work, lighter shifts thanks to accommodations. The fundraiser covered ongoing costs, easing the financial burden that had exacerbated her health issues. Their home on Birchwood Street looked renewed, fresh paint, trimmed yard, and a small garden Emily planted with Maria's help. Emily thrived too. The police department honored her with a Civilian Bravery Award at a ceremony attended by the whole precinct. She stood shyly on stage in a new dress, clutching the plaque as the chief praised her. "This young lady's quick thinking saved a life and inspired us all." Daniel pinned a junior officer badge on her, and the room erupted in cheers. Emily beamed, but her eyes sought her mother in the front row, who was crying happy tears. The story's impact rippled wider. It became a training example at the Academy for handling child-reported emergencies, emphasizing trust in young witnesses. Local schools invited Daniel to speak about courage, using Emily's tale, with permission, as inspiration. Children wrote letters to her, calling her a hero. One from a boy who called 911 for his grandma touched Emily deeply. Daniel and Maria remained close friends with the family. Holidays included them, Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas lights. Daniel taught Emily to ride a bike properly, while Maria braided her hair and shared stories of her own daughter. "You're like aunts and uncles now," Laura said one evening, voice thick with emotion. Reflecting years later, Emily would recall that terrifying run not with trauma, but pride. It taught her resilience, the value of seeking help, and that love could conquer fear. Laura lived to see Emily graduate high school, always crediting her daughter's bravery for giving her more time. For the officers, it was a reminder of humanity's goodness amid darkness. Daniel retired eventually, but told the story often, how a crying little girl begging, "Please follow me home," led them to a scene of profound love, leaving everyone, tough cops included, in tears. Not of sorrow, but overwhelming gratitude for a life saved and bonds forged. In the end, Emily's act didn't just rescue her mother, it restored faith in many hearts, proving that even the smallest among us can move mountains when driven by love.